Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's webinar where we will be talking about Metasearch specifically on TripAdvisor. For those that have joined or viewed some of our past webinars, we talked about Metasearch in general at a very high level and talking about rate parity and budgeting for it and things like that. But now we want to take a deeper dive into a specific channel, this one being TripAdvisor, and look at not just the Metasearch components, but also the other components such as reputation management, business listings, and so on. In fact, that's a lot of what we'll cover today. So we'll look at business listings to start, talk about some of the advantages to those and what they look like, and some examples of where they are practical to be used. Of course, we will talk about Metasearch, the points of sale, the strategies and views that are associated with those. We will talk about instant booking and some of the pros and cons that go along with that, as well as TripAdvisor advertising, which has received a lot of press release recently. Finally, talking about TripAdvisor popularity rankings, as well as the reviews and responses that go along with those, because they all play a part in this larger picture of your ecosystem, if you will, on TripAdvisor. So to start off with, let's talk about the business listings. Now, here are two examples of some hotels in New York City. And in fact, these are the top ranked hotels in popularity on TripAdvisor in that market. You'll see that popularity towards the top there next to the name. So the 414 Hotel, #1 of 479 hotels in New York City. In this particular example, however, they do not have a business listing. Well, what's the difference? Over on the right-hand side here, we see the Sherry Netherland Hotel, the #2 hotel on the market. And the difference you see between them is that the latter has a phone number, a hotel website, and a little link there for hotel deals. Now, one other key point of difference between these, you'll see the 414 Hotel takes the top spot down below when we get into the Metasearch part of it, whereas the Sherry Netherland Hotel does not. So let's take a look at something that kind of brings in the best of both worlds. Here is the Even Hotel Times Square. In this example, they have their hotel website listed, they have hotel deals link, and they also appear down below as part of the Metasearch point of sale. So they're getting the opportunity now to occupy the key points of sale with their brand direct links in several different places. So all about driving that business to the hotel direct. You see that in the square up there, and of course down below here. So one of the disadvantages, or one of the things that people don't necessarily like about the business listings is, well, they can be a little bit expensive, and especially in a market like New York City. Let's face it, it's New York. It's going to be more expensive there than it is, say, in Boise, Idaho, for example. So it does have a price tag that goes along with it, and you have to take that into consideration. One of the recommendations that I generally offer is that if you are in the top 10% of hotels in your market, and that being by popularity, that really the business listings should be almost a no-brainer. So in a market that has 479 hotels, the top 50, roughly, give or take, hotels probably ought to be participating in this, because it's all about how much visibility you're going to have. How many impressions do you have? Will somebody see your hotel? Will they be clicking on it? Will there be traffic generated by those business listings? So top 10%, probably a no-brainer. From about 10 to 25%, needs to be evaluated. It may be a good idea. There has to be some cost factor considered in that, and weigh the pros and cons between that, and just look at your general traffic statistics. Are you getting traffic from that site? And maybe even look at your trend and your history. Are you progressing upward in your popularity ranking, maybe downward? Now, the order in which hotels are displayed on TripAdvisor is not exclusively determined by popularity ranking. It can also be determined by, for example, your friends. If you have friends that have traveled to these hotels. So a hotel that might be popular amongst a certain segment of the population could, in fact, get a lot of traffic, a lot of visibility because of that. So top 10%, we said no-brainer. 10 to 25% worth considering, but weigh the pros and cons. Now, if we're outside the top 25%, so in a market of close to 500 hotels, if we're outside of, let's say, the top 100 or top 125, probably going to be hard to justify, because, again, that's going to be further down the list, further down the page, not going to get as much visibility and as much traffic as you would from somebody who's going to be in the top positions. So that's important to be aware of, and again, of course, weigh the pros and cons that go along with that. All right, so with that, let's now talk about the Metasearch component of this and the specific points of sale that we see within a hotel listing. So this example is the Omni Royal Orleans. And I'm featuring up here the the first three bidding strategies of position, bid to volume, and bid to max. And I'll explain what those are here in just a moment. But the reason I group those all together is because just by looking at the display here, you can't necessarily determine which one is actually being used, unless, of course, you're on the background, at the Omni Hotels and managing this. But the first one, position bidding, it's fairly self-explanatory. It means that I'm saying I want to be in position number 2. Now, one of the things that you have to be a little bit careful with that is when we look at our real estate here in the top 3 spots, technically speaking, it's only top 2 spots, really, because one of those top 3 spots is going to be occupied in more cases than not by a TripAdvisor instant booking link. So in this particular example, you see the number 1 spot and the number 3 spot both effectively occupied by Booking.com, with Omni Hotels and Resorts being in the number 2 spot in the middle. Now, Booking.com isn't always going to have 2 of those 3, but in some cases that will be there. But even if they only have 1 spot, say in the instant book, that still leaves only 2 extra spots for real estate, and then you have the additional extended listings below that. So bidding to a specific position can be difficult because, again, there's a very small target to hit with that. And you have to also consider, what am I trying to accomplish by bidding for that position? Am I doing it because I always want to have the visibility, I want to have the traffic, whatever the case may be. TripAdvisor then also offers a few alternatives to that. One of them is what they call bid to volume. What that does is it doesn't necessarily guarantee a specific position, but rather it says you will get visibility X% of the time, and that X% is defined based upon how much you're bidding for it. So you may say, I want to be visible 25% of the time, and you can bid to that volume, and they'll give you metrics to show that if you want to be visible 30% of the time, you have to bid at this level, this cost per click. Or for just a little bit more money, you might be able to get 35% of the time, and so on. So it's basically bidding to the volume and bidding to get that impression share, if you will. And then finally, bid to max is basically saying that I want to be visible all of the time. Now, that's not necessarily meaning the number 1 spot, and it's not necessarily meaning that you're by yourself. It is, however, meaning that if I'm Omni Hotels and Resorts, for example, that I am always going to come up in one of these places. So I will always have an impression and the visibility coming up in there. So all of these can be good strategies, but again, depending upon what your goals are, and have to be customized according to those, and understanding what your budget is going to be and relative to that. We had a separate webinar actually a week ago, which I encourage everybody to view, talking about budgeting for Metasearch, which also talks about how the goals need to be aligned according to those budgets. Okay, so these are the first 3, and all of the examples that you see over here on the right, I've got that number 2 spot filled with the Omni Hotels and Resorts, but all of these examples could potentially be making use of any one of these 3. Again, depends upon what you're doing on the back end that really determines that. So let's move on to the next example now here, where I'm talking about bid to only, also known as single chevron. Now let's talk about what is required to get this spot. First of all, the number 1 requirement is you have to be equal to or lower than the rates that are coming up as available. So in this case, we've got perfect rate parity across the board. We've got $161, not only by Marriott Vacations Club, but also by all of the OTAs that are on there. So that's the first qualifier. If you happen to be lower than everybody else, that can actually give you a little bit of an extra advantage with that. And that's an important element. We talked about rate parity as well in a separate webinar, and it's so important because rate parity is no longer about just being equal to everybody else. It, in many cases, is about being lower than when you're starting to talk about your direct booking campaigns. Okay, so back to this. So we have to have at least equal to or lower than everybody else, but then we also have to have a cost per click bid that is significantly higher than everybody else. So this can be an expensive proposition. Now, it does certainly have some advantages. One advantage, very obvious, you are right there. You are the premier listing and the number 1 choice that people are looking at. So you get a very prominent display. You are singled out amongst everybody else. Now that sounds really great. It does have one disadvantage though, and that being the fact that sometimes you don't want to get all of the clicks. Because let's face it, some of these clicks are coming from shoppers. Not everybody who clicks is always booking, in spite of the book now button that you see there. And in some cases, it can actually be an advantage to you to be able to share that space with some other sources, some other supply chains, so whether it be from an OTA, maybe even Marriott.com, whatever the case may be, so as to absorb that wealth of shoppers that are coming in and not all of them going directly to you. So again, weighing the pros and cons, and your analytics are going to help you determine that. You need to be able to look at your reports, see what your conversions are, and based on that understand, okay, should I be the sole, or I shouldn't say the sole because you do have other choices, but the primary selection that people can make, or do I want to share that with some other people? Now in this example, again, you occupy that one spot all by yourself. Here's another example of the same thing. This is also a single chevron / bid only view, but you should notice a little bit different. They've kept some real estate over here for the book on TripAdvisor, or the instant book part, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. This one happens to be in partnership with Marriott Hotels, and again, we've got the good rate parity across the board, so everything looks good, but now we're keeping that real estate open so that instant book can come on there as well. That's one important thing to understand with TripAdvisor. The way that they display these ads can and will change. They are constantly experimenting with different versions of this to see what is going to work best. And when you're working with big data with hundreds of thousands of clicks per day, you have really good A/B testing. By way of comparison, if you're measuring this against your own individual hotel, you may not see as much of a difference, but it does have impacts. So it's important to understand that what we show you today could be different tomorrow, and they are constantly trying out new things. All right, so we talked about the bid to only. Let's also now talk about another approach, and that is what we call ROAS, or return on ad spend. Now, in this example, I'm going down here and I'm featuring a listing that comes up in the extended listings as the official site, and I don't want that to be misleading. I'm not doing that to say that ROAS means you're in the extended listings. That's not what it means at all. But I did want to point that out because it's a little bit different than some of the other pages that I've shown the examples for. With a return on ad spend bidding, what the algorithms that TripAdvisor uses are going to do are saying that, okay, I know that my cost per click for the #1 spot, let's say, is $5. I know that my cost per click on the #2 spot is $4.75, and go on down the list until we get into the extended listings, maybe they're even $2.25. All right, so I know what the click-through rates are for all of these, and by the way, the click-through rates do drop from position 1 down into the extended listings. The top 3, of course, have the highest click-through rates. They also know what your conversion rates are. Now, that's an important detail to be aware of, because in order for them to know what those conversion rates are, it means that TripAdvisor does have to install pixel tracking to track that booking process past the click, which is normally where they back out, and you see the click and they're out at that stage, but they have to know if that made a booking. So once they have all those components in place and they understand all of that math, then they can start putting algorithms into place that will determine, well, okay, in order to hit this return on ad spend based upon your conversion rate and your revenue that you're receiving, then the ideal position for you to be is going to be maybe #3, maybe #5, maybe #1, whatever the case may be, and they're going to allow the system to optimize that for you. So that's a good way to get entry into the market if all else fails, because it allows you to come in, have a fairly safe return on ad spend. Of course, some historical data does have to get in place first, and see what's coming from that, and get some historical data and have an understanding. It may not have as much volume as you like. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If it does, great, more power to you, stay with it. But then if you look at that and say, okay, this is working well, we'd like to get a little more traction, you might want to look at one of these other strategies then as the better approach to achieve that goal. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about TripAdvisor Instant Booking. We've alluded to that in a number of cases. And let's just take a step back for a moment and understand where instant booking comes from, because that'll kind of help us understand when and why it can be effective. So in the beginning, as they say, there was Metasearch, and there was Metasearch on mobile in particular. And you ran into this problem where TripAdvisor would have people clicking on those mobile links and getting to a website that was not mobile optimized. And so there was a lot of confusion. Do I go this way or that way, over here, over there? And the conversion rates were not very good. It met with what we refer to as the visual thud. So it got there, nobody was booking, nobody was converting, and so it wasn't working. So one day, somebody over at TripAdvisor got to thinking about this and said, hey, it sure would be nice if everybody had a mobile optimized booking engine on their website. But fact is, I can't make everybody do that. But then wait a minute, what if we just built one for them? hey, let's go talk to our board about this and see if we can pull this off. And lo and behold, they did. And in fact, it worked pretty well. So here's one of the early examples of this. I pull up this hotel on my iPhone and I get this display. I can click right here to book. It's a mobile optimized website. It's efficient and it's something that works very well. So in fact, it worked so well that they started to say, hey, we kind of run into this same problem on desktop. We like to have all the conversions we can off of desktop, but the fact is that Metasearch comes in at a different starting point than what the average consumer does on the hotel website. A lot of hotel booking engines are not optimized to come in from Metasearch. So they came in and said, hey, you know what? Let's apply this to Metasearch as well, and to the desktop part of that. So that's where you see these examples such as we saw earlier, where Booking.com can even occupy 2 points of sale. The top one is from a managed CPC, as you would normally see, and then the bottom part of this here being the instant book part of that equation. Once I click on that, I'm taken to a screen where I can quickly and easily choose what I had before at $144, maybe get one other room choice, but they don't want to present too many choices. They want to avoid what they call the paradox of choice, where it makes it difficult for you to make a decision. So, okay, well, do I want a queen or a premier king? Well, maybe I do want that king bed, but either way, I click on one of these and I'm giving you my name. Click, click, book is what we call that. And we see that as being the constant recurring theme for a successful Metasearch booking engine. It's a mobile mentality. Most of the action happens on desktop. Not to misunderstand, the volume and the traffic comes from desktop, but it's a mobile mentality. I want to get in there. I know the rates. I know the availability. I know a little bit about the hotel. I said book a reservation. I want to do one thing, and that is book my reservation. Get me through that as quickly as possible. And so that's an important thing to understand. And that is why Instant Book has become very successful. Because let's face it, it's difficult to change your booking engine. And so this has been an alternative where somebody can just have TripAdvisor book that within the TripAdvisor experience. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons. So one of the advantages, of course, being the higher conversion rates. Like we said, the lack of responsive design and booking engines, which are designed for website visitors, people that come to your brand.com and go through the sales cycle from that point forward, as opposed to somebody that comes in already knowing the rates and availability, which normally are the number one drop-off point in the sales cycle, but they already know that. So now we're clicking on that, and that gives them a mobile mentality. I want to book that. Google does this too, and we'll talk about them next week, by the way, but Google and TripAdvisor both do this with their assisted booking models. Click, click, book, getting you through that process quickly. So higher conversion rates, mobile optimized, paid as a commission versus a cost per click. We talked about this in our budgeting webinar, which I encourage you to view, but this can be an important detail. Because it is paid as commission, in many cases that removes the need to have a line item for this in your marketing budget. It's kind of what we call the marketing the budget volleyball game between marketing and reservations department. If there's a cost per click, oftentimes that comes out of your marketing budget. If it is a commission paid on a consumed reservation, that usually comes out of your reservation department's budget. So something to consider with that. And that oftentimes makes it much easier to plan for as part of your budget. You don't have any unexpected highs or lows. You just know that, okay, I get a reservation, I'm paying a commission on it. And usually a much lower commission than what you pay to the OTAs. So you're still in good shape and you still get all the guest information. And in plug and play, we talk about it as plug and play, not because it's necessarily easy. There is a lot of technology that becomes involved because remember that data, the guest information, does have to pass from TripAdvisor to your brand.com. So there has to be PCI compliance and certification processes that are all covered as part of that anytime you're passing that guest information. But once that is all set up, it is kind of plug and play. You just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to pay a 12-15% commission and send me bookings. And you don't have to manage it. You don't have to monitor it. You can just kind of let it go. All right, so the disadvantages are that you are giving up that control. You let it go, you lose control, right? Less visibility. Typically, your managed CPC wins the day when we talk about positioning and visibility. Because keep in mind, anytime that you're doing this with TripAdvisor, you may sign an agreement that says you're paying 12% commission, 15% commission, whatever it may be, and in exchange for that, let's say you're getting 50% visibility. So you're showing up 50% of the time, but that also means that you are not showing up 50% of the time, and you lose the control over that. And of course, 50% of the time, in theory, that can only be divided amongst two different clients, maybe yourself and Booking.com. What if somebody else comes in though and says, I want to pay you 18%? At some point, there's going to come that day where TripAdvisor starts going, yeah, highest bidder wins. Also, not just about owning the guest, but truly embracing the guest. So from assisted booking models, you do get the guest information. That is an important differential between assisted booking and an OTA booking. You get that guest data. However, you're not bringing that guest into your environment. They didn't get to your website, so you haven't been able to enamor them with the pictures of the beachfront or whatever the case may be, or any of the other things that you want to do after you've got the booking, like upgrading, for example. But we want to get a guest and many times into our environment. Now, if I'm a roadside hotel, airport hotel, that's not critical for me. So this assisted booking may not be a disadvantage from that respect. But then there's also the topic of what I call outsourcing your bookings. Now, if any of us remember back right after 9/11, one of the things that happened in the travel industry is we all sold our souls to the OTAs. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. It was a good thing because, hey, let's face it, the economy was in trouble. The hospitality industry was in trouble. We were looking for ways to get bookings. And we were ready and willing to let Expedia, Priceline, anybody else come in and make those reservations for us. And then as the economy improved a little bit, we started going, wait a minute, I'd kind of like to start taking that business back just a little bit. The whole direct booking movement, if you will, is not new. It has a lot of attention this year. It's been getting a lot of press, but it's not new by any means. We've been trying to do this for a better part of a decade and more. So getting that traffic back to our own website has been a goal for a really long time. So when you start allowing another site like TripAdvisor to book a reservation for you, you start giving up some of that control. You're outsourcing your bookings, and I have to admit that makes me cringe just a little bit. So times when it's not appropriate to use it are, number one, if you're already getting double-digit conversion rates off of your own booking engine from Metasearch. No need to, because you're already getting a great conversion rate. You want your own branded search. You want to own those terms. Anytime somebody's looking at your hotel, looking at your name, you want to make sure that you own that space and you have control over that. You want more volume visibility, and you not only want to own the guest, but you have a marketing plan to maximize this. It's great to say you want to own the guest, but now what does that mean? How are you going to take advantage of that and use it? And quite simply, I want control. Okay, so now let's talk just briefly about TripAdvisor advertising. Here's a couple of examples. These actually appeared in a news release the other day, so I was going to use the same hotel as an example. But we see another thing happening now with a lot of hotels where you get your business listings we talked about earlier at the top, you get your point of sale with Metasearch that we talked about at the bottom, but then you also get these special offers. And again, by the way, these are not new. The way that they are being used is what becomes a little bit new, and that is that we will even see cases where they may undermine themselves and their own rates just in an effort to make sure that they're getting the visibility. This is not exclusive to Marriott by any means. So I clicked on one of these, and it brings me to a window that says rewards members save 20%. So we see a lot of this effort in terms of loyalty programs where we're trying to collect that data, trying to get that traffic and get the membership. And statistically speaking, we know that for a lot of these brands, those membership enrollments have gone up. So it has definitely had an effect on that. So this is another point of sale, another place where you can get some visibility and have exposure for your own brand on TripAdvisor. On this particular example, once I clicked through actually to look at the rates, here's what I showed up with. So I do kind of question if that's actually a 20% discount or not, but you can see some examples such as that. Okay, so let's click through here to the next part I want to talk about of the advertising. Another example, this is coming from Hilton, and right now, of course, Hilton across the United States has their promotional campaign of stop clicking around. And you can see they've plugged that same thing in here on this display. So continuity amongst your advertising campaigns, you have that same exposure for that same campaign, which has a lot of recognition because it's getting a lot of press time, TV coverage, and so on. So yeah, why not put that in here? It absolutely makes sense. Okay, so we've gone through all of this work. We've paid the money for a business listing. We've optimized our Metasearch campaigns. We're getting visibility. We own the points of sale. Everything is great, right? Except now we've done all that and we haven't paid attention to the reviews and our ranking, our popularity. After all, TripAdvisor started off as a reputation website. That's what it does, what it is. So it's important that we are aware of what that looks like. So popularity rankings, first of all, are determined by a number of different things. Your ratings of your reviews, how many reviews you have, how frequent they are, and the search volume, how many times somebody has looked for you. And that helps you determine if you're going to be ranked number 1 of 479 or number 400 of 479 or anything in between there. So it's important that you're aware of that and understand that's important, and look at those trends and see how you can improve that. If you're spending money on the first part that we've talked about, business listings, Metasearch, ought to be spending money and time to pay attention to this part. Same thing goes with your reviews and responses. If somebody writes a review, it's important to be aware of that and make sure that you're involved in engaging that guest. Particularly this example, I like this one because they were talking about the hotel had no down, no feathers for the pillows. And you notice the response down here, very straightforward response, but also makes a point here. We regret to hear that your request for a down-free room was not met. So what that tells me is that, okay, it wasn't met. Okay, I don't know why, I don't know what happened, but it also tells me that, oh, hey, apparently it could have been. So if that was a big deal for me, now I'm tagging that in my brain going, oh, wait a minute, okay, so apparently they could have done this. Somehow it didn't happen, but at least I know that it could have happened. So, good information to share on there. In this day and age, your reputation management is not a new thing. It's been around for several years here. So if you are not already involved in this and not already monitoring your reviews, managing those and responding to those, I do encourage you to do so. And there's a number of companies out there, and I'll show you here a graphic with those in a moment, but several companies that can specialize that. Don't forget about your general content as well. So we've talked about all of this other stuff. There's one more section to be aware of, and that is your general content. Your photos, how you're listed on here, the area of town that you're in, mid-range, midtown, free breakfast, all of those different elements. Making sure you have professional photos in there. The traveler photos part that you see on here actually goes to OTA sites in more cases than not. And so make sure you have quality content that's coming up on that page. And if you need more help with managing your reputation and some of your content on TripAdvisor, here are several companies that are involved with that. Revenate, Review Pro, Trust You, and Medallia. All of them specialize in this, and I encourage you to reach out to one of those or somebody else that you may already be working with to help you with that in more detail. So with that, I do want to thank everybody for your time here today. We will continue these webinars weekly. Next week, we're going to have a similar one, but talking about Google and the nuances that are involved with that travel site. And the week following, we will combine a webinar to talk both about Kayak and Trivago. So stay tuned for more information on those details. We look forward to having you as part of those webinars. We certainly hope this was helpful. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. My name is Dean Schmidt. I'm the Sales Operations Manager here at DerbySoft. Click. Thank you for joining. Take care.